Now unbowed, unbent and unbroken. That's Donald Trump yesterday as he remained defiant, pleading not guilty to the latest round of charges against him.
And they're serious ones too. He's charged with conspiracy to defraud the United States, obstruction of an official proceeding, and against the rights of citizens. He told reporters that it was merely the persecution of a political opponent.
Well, thank you very much. This is a very sad day for America. And it was also very sad driving through Washington, D.C. and seeing the filth and the decay. When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him. We can't let this happen in America. Thank you very much, everybody.
Well, let's talk to political analyst for the Foreign Policy Research Institute, Ronald Granieri, joins us now. Good to see you, as always. What do you make of this? Because the problem is, and from a UK perspective, right, it just seems that, you know, what is a serious judicial matter has just devolved into nothing more than party politics.
Well, I mean, it is indeed very serious, and these are unprecedented charges. But the entire, let's say, Mr. Trump's behavior after the November 2020 election was unprecedented, and so the whole American political system and judicial system is placed in the difficult situation of what do you do when you have the first time in history somebody loses a presidential election, not only insists they didn't lose, which is perfectly within your rights to say you didn't lose an election, but actually has supporters around the country who are actively developing fraudulent lists of electors and are behaving in ways that are directly contrary to the smooth functioning of the entire process, culminating, of course, in an insurrectionary attack on the Capitol of the United States. So the whole thing is unprecedented. And we're left with that difficult situation is, do you let something like this go? You certainly can't do that. And when it appears that Mr. Trump himself was being told by some advisors that it was clear that he lost, but he decided not only not to admit that in public, but to double down on his claims of nefarious activities by other folks and to encourage increasingly violent rhetoric, increasingly problematic legal activities, and then actually encouraging people to go and march on the Capitol.
And of course, his defence at the moment, as it is very strong, isn't it? When he stands there and he says, look, I am the leading candidate to beat in the next election. My popularity is going up. I'm going to be the person to beat. And therefore, that's why they're trying to persecute me. And to his following, which is big, that's a very convincing argument, isn't it?
It is a fantastically self-serving argument, that's for sure. And he's helped along by even his alleged rivals in the Republican Party, who are so, afraid of his popularity that they're unwilling to criticize him. That adds to the sort of the historic nature of this entire situation, that you or I, if we were thinking of running for public office and it was known that we had suddenly been indicted on a few dozen felonies, we would probably find our ability to run for office severely restricted. And yet somehow, because of the way Mr. Trump has been able to mobilize his rhetoric and because of the attitudes of his most staunch followers, he's actually trying to turn these negatives into positives. I can't think of another example of something like this. And it's clear that we're getting deeper and deeper into these uncharted waters because he's not going to give up, and so we're going to see these legal proceedings continue, and they're going to then be the background music to the presidential nominating process well into next summer.
Yeah, but what is really interesting in this, Ronald, is, I mean, obviously you're you're making the point of how political Trump is being around all of this and claiming it as a witch hunt. But there is an argument to say, isn't there? Well, look, the judicial system is seriously flawed in the United States because it's so politicised, and we're talking about a Democrat judge, we're talking about a Democratic state where he's likely to be tried with Democratic, more favoured jurors and all that. So there is an argument to say, well, politically, this is pitched against him.
Actually, I got to push back against that, Stephen, especially when you consider that this is maybe what's happening in Washington, D.C., but Florida is a Republican state. And of course, in Florida, he's appearing before a judge that he himself appointed when he was president. So I would argue that the judicial system is operating the way the judicial system is supposed to operate, right? We talk about operating without fear or favor. We talk about no one person is above the law. I'm not saying this is easy or this is simple. What do you do when there is credible evidence that can be approved by a grand jury for an indictment that a political figure has been involved in illegal activities? Are you supposed to shrug your shoulders and say, well, we can't possibly indict this person because then that would be seen to be political, because that in itself would be political, right? You cannot allow anyone to intimidate the justice system and say, I have a lot of supporters who are going to support me no matter what, so you cannot dare to indict me. Ultimately, we have to place our confidence in the functioning of the system. We'll see what happens when things do go before a judge, when they do go before a jury, when we see more of the evidence. But the mere fact of an indictment, as the old line used to go in the television show Beretta, right? So, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. If you don't want to be indicted for trying to overthrow an election, don't try to overthrow an election. If you think that you can win the court case, well, hire your lawyers and show up in court. And that's what Mr. Trump is going to do.
Yeah, and the lawyers, I presume, will just string out this business until after a presidential election?
There is certainly a strong impulse to do that, right? And they've been pretty clear. One of the lines of defense that Mr. Trump has is if he were to be reelected as president, then he could politicize the justice system and simply have his appointed attorney general just let the charges go. And indeed, he's made pretty clear that is one of his possible lines of defense, or perhaps even pardon himself. Now you want to talk about politicization, right? That would be serious politicization of the judicial system. But no, we're going to have this challenge of this is going to be going on for a while. Mr. Trump does not have any interest in wanting to resolve this very quickly. It's actually pretty clear that the special prosecutor had wanted faster, earlier dates for hearings so that this could move along more quickly. I don't think that's likely to happen. And so we're just going to be dealing with this for quite some time to come.
Okay.